This lesson is going to be somewhat different than all the other ones because this one is mainly going to be really short, and it's just really going to be a story. It's a kind of a quick story of situations that I have been in, and the conclusions I came to about that. And if you have never been in these situations, I'm hoping that when you maybe find yourself in the same situation or position that I was in, rather than you have to kind of try and maybe make mistakes as you try to kind of work yourself through it, that you can at least think back to this lesson and go, oh yeah, I remember when he was talking about that. This is really, really similar. That's what he did. Let me think about that. Maybe I'll do something totally different. Again, there's 1,000 ways to program a radio station and 1,000 ways to attack any situation. I will be beating that into your head for this entire course. Anybody who tells you this is the way you do it, they are just flat out wrong. And one of the reasons I'm doing these little short things is to make it clear to you that those people are wrong. And I'm trying to give you free reign, at least in your own mind, that you're not wrong, they're wrong. That if you want to try stuff and you want to gamble, you're doing the right thing. Now, you may not be able to get away with doing that at the company you work for, so you definitely have to bear that in mind. But I don't want you thinking, because I've been in situations where somebody is telling me something, and as they're telling me, and I'm literally going, you're an idiot. You have, literally, I've done this many, many times. In my head, somebody's saying, we should do this, or here's the radio rule, and I'm going, no, man, I've seen it 1,000 times. I've seen other people talk about this. I know firsthand, you're an idiot. You have no clue whatsoever what you're talking about. You're just regurgitating stuff from some other idiot. And I don't want to be doing that. So I just want to point out to you that there's lots of ways of doing anything in radio, okay? Some things work better than others, usually all the time, but there's no hard and fast, this is it, just doesn't exist. Anyway, so let me go through this one for you, and this will really only pertain to you if you are in a market where there are a lot of immigrants, okay? And I kind of came up with this when I was in Toronto, because Toronto is a huge immigrant city, okay? I think more than half of the population was born in some other country and came, and that's why it's a great international cosmopolitan city. It's an awesome city. As a matter of fact, which most people probably don't know, it's the third biggest metropolis, market, whatever you want to call it, in North America, other than, in English, North America minus, Mexico City. So it's an international city and a lot of immigrants. And I was a GM at this point, and then I made our research start to reflect this question that I had, and then I would see the answer, so I'm going to pass it on to you. And when you think about it, it's going to make complete sense to you. One of the other things that led up to this was I used to travel a lot, okay? Everybody has something, big houses, big fast cars, smoking cigars, whatever. I love to travel the world and immerse myself in different cultures and, show up, stay for a month and just try to be that person. I lived in Uruguay, lived in Argentina, I went to Asia, Singapore, Hong Kong, just immersing in all over Europe. But what I found being a radio guy, and you would probably do the same thing because, radio person, what do? You turn on the radio. And I used to find it really interesting when you do that in foreign countries, you're rarely going to hear a rock radio station. They sort of don't exist. Or there'll be 20 radio stations that are some form of pop, and like one rock radio station. That's the norm around the world. If you go into Latin America and South America, it's not a thing. Rock stations are not a thing. They just aren't. And if you go into Asia, same deal. And if you go into Southeast Asia or India or Middle East, same thing. I mean, there might be one, but there's not going to be a lot of them. And there might be classic rock there. That's a different deal because classic rock, the core of classic rock is the rock songs from Top 40. Rolling Stones hits, Foreigner hits from Top 40 that are rock. That's really classic rock. They're rock versions of Top 40 stations, oldies. If you hone it down, that's what it is, with an occasional smattering of some album cuts. But for the most part, there are no rock radio stations. So now think that through for just a second. What's the age bracket of somebody growing up where their ear is set? I mean, you've heard this a million times, and everybody has different years, but just to make it even wider than normal, somewhere between the ages of 9 and 17, your ear and what you like or dislike is going to be set in those age brackets. Let's say you're 19 or 20 and you move to North America and you come to a city, maybe you're in Milwaukee, maybe you're in Los Angeles, maybe you're in Toronto, New York, whatever the city is your ear going to change? I don't think so. As a matter of fact, I know so. Your ear is not going to change because I started having our research for one of our radio stations. I had an AC radio station that when I would go to the events and I would sit and look and, I'd watch the people there. One time we gave away $1 million, literally $1 million in cash. That was a pretty awesome promotion. But we gave the $1 million away and, we're in a big auditorium and, there's a couple thousand people there and I'm looking, I'm going, you know what? The brunt of the people in here are immigrants, tons of people who are, Asian, Southeast Asian, Caribbean, and people who are obviously local, were born and raised in Toronto, but the brunt of the room were immigrants. You could just see it. And so it sort of struck me as, well, that's interesting. They listen to our radio station. Then I started asking on music tests to put those questions in. Were you born here? Where did you come? What part of the world did you come from? And then start tabulating the scores of the music accordingly. So I could see, okay, here's the whole test. Now let me just look at the immigrants. What do they do? And what they would do is they would lean a little bit toward R&B or pop, or stay right on pop. Because that's the brunt of the radio stations around the world when you get out of North America. They are not rock, they're pop. They're pretty much straight out the middle pop, or they'll be pop leaning R&B. And the R&B leaning will be something that sounds like Motown, back in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s, or sort of disco-y. It's got that feel of the music. I'm sure you can picture Middle Eastern music to you. You probably would have heard somebody, drive by in their car and you could hear it out the window. Is that anywhere near rock? Are the instrumentations anything like rock? Like, not at all. The closest thing to it would be, I don't know, pop, maybe some feel of R&B, something in that range. That's their ear, that's what they're attuned to, but it's definitely not rock. I just want you to bear that in mind. I'll throw that out to you. Again, use it or not use it, but that was my experience, and that's what I believe. That I believe, generally, to sum this up, if you are in a city and you have a radio station where you're in a city where there are a lot of immigrants and you're in a format that will have a lot of immigrants listening to it, most versions of AC and most versions of mainstream top 40, if you're programming one of those type of radio stations in an urban AC, you got a really good shot of getting immigrants to listen to it because that's going to be their first taste in music. You are going right at their ear. Hope that helps. One more thing for you to be thinking about, which is what I really want to do on this course more than anything. Not so much teaching you all the basics and stuff about it, how to program and what comes up in a course, and we're certainly doing that. But my main objective here is to have you be a free thinker, your own thinker, somebody who just takes what I just said, and thinks it through and goes, idiot, or, yeah, that makes sense. Why don't I try that? Or I'll keep that for another time. I want you to think on your own. That's what I really want out of this course more than anything. I want you to think differently. Not to rip off an Apple phrase, but I just did. All right? So until the next lesson, see ya.